Okay, the only thing I'd ask you is to keep one thing in mind. This review was actually never planned, and that's why it will be a little bit less structured, maybe a little bit less detailed, and the reason therefore is just the following. One of my viewers asked me if I could review the x360 Spectre, also in relation to my planned comparison with the best Ultrabooks, and I thought to myself, if I can grant him this wish, especially since I'm interested in this device as well, then I will do this. But like I said, I didn't have the time as I usually have. I'm a little bit short on time, but at least I will give you the most important stuff. Like I said, a little bit less structured, but it should be good enough to give you a good glimpse of what this device is capable of. So let's go into the first thing, the design and build quality. In terms of design, I definitely like it quite a lot. It's maybe not the most fashionable one, not the amazing design that I would like to see maybe, but yeah, it's fine. And especially compared to something like the Surface Laptop, you can see almost the same size, even a little bit shorter due to the different aspect ratio, but here is all fine. Same also goes for the build quality. Not really a whole lot of flex here, also on the bottom. Feels mostly solid. There are some that feel a little bit more premium maybe, but as you can see here, not really a whole lot of flex also on the keyboard side. This is all fine. On the bottom then we can see that we have some more like hard plastic feet. They don't really protect it all that well from sliding. The speakers here, some ventilation holes as well for here. And in terms of ports, for example, we have USB 3.0 on the left side with the headphone jack, power button here, a little bit of a cutout, then the volume rocker, USB Type-C 2 times, and you can see it's Thunderbolt. This one is for charging. So in that regard, definitely all nice. You can't unfortunately open it with one hand. The hinge is just a little bit too stiff, but the good thing is it has a yoga hinge, which is definitely nice to see. You have different modes, and I will get into that a little bit later on. Here we can also see the Bang & Olufsen speakers. The build quality inside is also nice. What I've noticed though is that the right side is a little bit sharper, where the left side is a little bit rounded off. So yeah, see it as what it is. Now let's get a little bit closer and talk about the one thing that is actually a deal breaker for me, but I will try to be as little as subjective as I can be, but still telling you just what I think, just to be honest. For me, this is a deal breaker for two reasons, but I'll get to them a little bit later. The good thing is we have extra function buttons. We have one level backlight, as you can see here turned on and turned off. And the overall feedback of the typing is good because, as you can hear, nicely quiet, not a whole lot of treble, but it's nicely dampened, so the feedback is fine. Now, what's my problem? One that I have that's a quality issue thing that I won't consider is that this button is kind of dead for me. It doesn't give you a click. But when I did some Googling, I noticed that a lot of people have problems with stuck keys, and one who tried to repair this one actually broke it off. But here are my two main issues. The first one that is not so important is that, as you can see, the backlight actually once turned on makes it harder to read. And I'm not quite sure who thinks that silver buttons are a good idea, but even less so. And this person, in my opinion, should actually, and now it sounds hard and it sounds stupid, but should be fired, because one extra row of buttons to the right of the enter key is just weird. And I'm using the QWERTZ layout. So in Germany, we usually have a double height enter button. So this would be one button, which is not the case. For everyone in the US or wherever, it won't be a thing, but it is for anyone who's typing on German keyboards quite something you have to get used to. So that's a little bit of an issue, but that extra row actually shifts the whole layout towards the left. And if you're just a normal typer, 10 fingers and so on, I made so many mistakes, and you really have to get heavily used to it, especially if you switch a lot of other devices. It will be always something you have to get used to, and it's just something so weird. And as stupid as it sounds, this is a deal breaker for me, because you get similar devices for the same price already that don't have this thing, but this is not okay for me. Let's zoom out a little bit once again so I can actually enter. There is no kind of fingerprint reader, at least not on this version. Let's talk about the trackpad. This one, as you can see, is a little bit wider than normal, and I have to say this one works fine. As you can see here, scrolling is a little bit weird since you don't have precision pad or something like that. You have their own software which gives you some extra options, but scrolling feels a little bit weird, but the texture is really nice and it works precise. All the free finger gesture still works, so no complaints here on this side. This one, I would say, is really good, but this is not okay. But let's forget this and talk about the next thing, which would be the pen, because yes, this has a stylus support and the version I ordered has one, and it works absolutely nice. I'm not someone who uses pens a lot, but from what I see, the precision works fine. You have different pressure points, of course, and all is fine here. Let's zoom in a little bit. And the only thing that I don't think is so good as on something like a Surface maybe is that it feels more like plastic on glass, so it's not quite as soft touch or rubberized, and therefore just feels a little bit harder. It's not like glass on plastic, so it still is a little bit softer, but not on a level of the better ones out there. But still, otherwise, no problems at all, especially since you don't get too many tablets these days or convertibles with a pen, so still gets a plus from my side. Now the next thing, let me quickly try to find a way to get to that. My display test pics to get to the display. Because what I have to say here is, the one thing is the brightness. Because I've used it on very high brightness levels, because it, in my opinion, just gets about acceptable bright at 85%. The maximum brightness though is fine, but it gets bright really, really late in the game. The 1080p display though is absolutely fine, because I expected it to be not maybe satisfyingly sharp, but it is. No problems here at all, especially no scaling issues. White point is also nice, and even though I didn't make my spider measurements, I have to say quality-wise it's fine, because I really like the picture actually. Very nice and vibrant, accurate colors, so definitely fully pleasing on that term. Nothing to complain about. So let's get into the speaker part and start a song. Let me quickly check something. Yep. Yep, this gets a very good no problems at all, because I was surprised how loud it is, and this time the Bang & Olufsen actually made a banging job, because the sound is nice. Something like the Surface Pro sounds maybe a little bit more high quality, but this one is louder, and due to kind of up-firing, yeah, absolutely nice. Headphone jack as well. Performance-wise, this is very, very nice, because at least the SSD speeds 3,300 of read speeds with over 1,000 of write speeds. Code boot with about 12 seconds isn't the very fastest one, but still fine enough. I don't really have to show, yes, scrolling works fine, because 1080p with a dual core here, KB Lake, works just fine. This is a top performer with the mouse, with the trackpad, with everything else. But same as on any other Ultrabook, I will say this. You can do video editing, you can do photo editing, but I would not recommend it. If you really want to do this on a more frequent base, get something with a quad core, get something with an NVIDIA card. But for all daily tasks, this one will just suit you fine, and it really has a light appearance with 1080p. Super nice performer, absolutely great. Now heat and noise. I'm not going to show you the noise demo, just didn't record it, but I did all my testings, and I have to just say that even though when I tested downstairs where it's not that hot, the fans sometimes did kick in, but it's not a huge issue. Usually I would say like 95% it is completely noiseless. But one thing that I have to mention, even though I didn't really notice any normal coil whine in normal use, one thing that was almost, I would say, unacceptable is the coil whine. Once you plug in the charger, because the moment you plug in the charger, you will hear a loud coil blistering, some electricity kind of flowing, like the capacitors aren't properly set, and this was actually annoying. And if I would have this laptop in use actually more frequently on charge, I think I would say no, this is not okay. And that's actually one of my reasons why in overall this device, even though in terms of price it is very nice and especially on sale, but there are just a few things like the keyboard and this coil whine. Could be maybe just on my unit, I don't know, maybe you would have to check that, but that is not fine. But otherwise, the maximum fan noise was absolutely acceptable. It's maybe not super high quality, mostly subtle, but I've seen already more subtle ones that have a little bit more frequent sound, but definitely not a deal breaker here. Heat as well, stayed within everything normal. Battery life. Charged in about 2.5 hours, and I would say the battery life is actually really good, because you can expect about 8 hours. This was with all battery saving technologies turned off. My lowest one was at around 6.5, but I didn't really reach more than 8. So I would say roughly say 7, maybe 8, but also consider that I get less. So maybe you should expect at least like 20-25%. That's what I got from my experience. Software wise, not really need to get into that. And I would say I will just cover the pros and cons this times roughly out of my head. Just the way I normally do it, but without showing you. So, design. Yeah, I would say at least a really good. No promise here at all, but it makes up for that a lot actually with the Yoga hinge and the option for the stylus pen. We have already Thunderbolt, so quite a nice port selection. At least we get one USB Type A port. So it's maybe not anymore the most compact and lightest laptop out there, but therefore very versatile. So I definitely give it to that, and that's why I will actually give it an overall design and so on a great. Keyboard though, usually I say good, very good, really good, but this for me, deal breaker. Like I said, super subjective. If you ever tried it and you are fine with it, okay, but I can't get used to the layout. The dead button is not something that I will consider, and the backlight with the silver lighting or the silver caps, I just don't like. Trackpad is very good, or really good, no problems here. The display, maybe not the highest response, but definitely very good quality. The brightness was a little bit something odd though. Speaker is very good, performance is very good. In terms of noise, I've seen better ones, but it's still totally fine. The heat is fine. Battery life is very good. So as you can see, which leads me to the conclusion, it is an overall really good one. But the problem is that you can get pretty much the same aspects in terms of qualities on other ones like the Dell XPS 13, Surface Laptop, MateBook X. Yes, this time actually on sale sometimes is noticeably cheaper, and then if you have, that's just what I'm telling you, if you have tried the keyboard and if you don't have the coil issue, then no problems. Then I can easily, wholeheartedly recommend it because, like I said, the qualities are all there. But no, if you don't like my subjective opinion, just ignore what I'm going to say now. The coil whine and this keyboard in combination, that it is just not super impressive in some aspects, even though very good. I just personally have a hard time recommending it because, like I said, if there is one deal breaker already, it is enough for me. And the keyboard with the weird layout is that for me. But I'll cut it short right now. Let me know in the comments. And I know a lot of people will be displeased, especially if you own one of these. And I definitely, like I said, very subjective. But the viewer that asked me for my opinion just got this here now, so I don't think I can be blamed for that. It is not a proper review that I usually do because I did not quite the same testing that I always do. I just made it more briefly, but definitely good enough to give you a good glimpse of what this one is capable of, which would be good, especially if you find it for a really good price and you can live with the compromises. Okay, that's it. I hope I answered your question, even though the viewer was German. Still, maybe it helped you as well. So maybe a thumbs up, subscription, and hate comments down there below. Until next time, bye.